Now, where does this claim come from? People like Hood Boy and other extremists, whoever they may be, wherever they are, they make these claims that what have the Muslims done in the last 1,000 years. This claim is peddled again and again and again repeatedly on mainstream channels through these people, through these mouthpieces. And we don't clearly know who they work for, but they are either they're very ignorant or very malicious, because there are books written on that very topic as to how Muslims contributed for the last 1,000 years. Some of them actually claim that Muslims, whatever they did on science, was simply copying from the Greeks and others, right? Muslims did not write any original works. This lie is an Orientalist lie which is being peddled to this day. A lot of these Islamophobes and people who hate Islam and Muslims, what they do is they take Orientalist works from the 19th century, from German, from Dutch, from French, and from English historians who were writing hostile works criticizing Islam because most of them were Christian, unfortunately, and they didn't like Islam due to colonialism as well, because India was colonized. Much of the Muslim world was colonized at the time. A lot of the Orientalists were writing hostile works to belittle the Muslim civilization and the contribution of the Muslim civilization, right? And they wanted to inflate the image of the colonial powers. They wanted to show the colonial powers as the civilizers of mankind. In order to do that, they had to belittle what happened before, right? So they tarnished the Muslim civilization and the history of Islam, not only in India, but elsewhere, okay? And then later on, some Orientalists realized, hold on, this is going too far. And they started to write books about the Muslim civilization, praising it. Hold on, it is not like that. There is a lot Muslims did. And people like John William Draper, who wrote a history of the intellectual development of Europe, in that book he pays lavish tributes to the Muslim civilization. Like George Sarton in the early 20th century had written a book titled An Introduction to the History of Science. And this introduction, 70% of it is full of Muslim contribution throughout the last 1,000 years. Okay? So here in this book, a very, very important book, it is titled The Hidden Debt to the Muslim Civilization. Okay, it is authored by Al-Jazairi, S.E. Al-Jazairi, Hidden Debt to Muslim Civilization. This is an encyclopedia of information. It contains information and details on how Muslims studied the Greek science and other trends, and how they developed it, and then came up with their original works, criticizing, correcting wherever necessary. So it has chapters on that topic. And people like Hood Boy and his followers, they keep peddling this idea that the Muslims are simply copyists. They were plagiarizers who simply copied the Greek science into the Arabic language, and then the Europeans came on later on, and then they translated these Arabic works into Latin, and lo and behold, the European Renaissance. Now, that is not the case. In fact, I will invite you to read another book titled The Arabic Origins of the European Renaissance by George Saliba, okay, published by the Columbia University Press. The Arabic Origins of the European Renaissance. In that book, he argues that the science of astronomy came entirely from the Muslim world in its original form, not simply a copied form of the Greek science. So this book is an encyclopedia of information. It will blow your minds away on this topic as to the Muslim contribution to science and other things. Not that the Muslims claim superiority over other civilizations. No, it's not like that. In fact, science was a global pursuit. It was a human pursuit. Romans did it, Greeks did it, Indians are doing it, the Persians did it, the Babylonians are doing it in their own way, the Egyptian civilization, 3,000 years history of it. Okay, and then the Muslims came along and they took all these works and they put them together and they translated them into the Arabic language and produced their original researches and then put them forward to the rest of humanity. For 1,000 years, Muslims dominated this field. So people like Hood Boy, they exaggerate and they simply take ideas from 19th century Orientalists which have been debunked. I strongly recommend another book by Edward Said, whereby he discusses the Orientalist attitude towards the Muslim world or the Arabs in general. And that book is titled Orientalism. Okay. Now coming to the last 1,000 years, I mean, I don't have time to address all the Muslim contributions and Muslim works and Muslim history of science in the last 1,000 years. I can quickly talk about the Ottomans and the Mughals, who were two major powerful dynasties in the last 1,000 years. Ottomans came to power, let's say 1299 to 1924. That's almost 600 years. Ottomans dominated not only the Mediterranean, they dominated much of Europe as well as the Middle East and North Africa. And they produced immense works on science. In fact, there are books you can find online. If you were to Google, Mr. Hood Boy and your followers, if you were to Google science and Ottomans, you will get so much literature that you'll be blown away. Another book I would like to mention very quickly is titled Intellectual Curiosity and the Scientific Revolution, right? It is by Toby E. Huff, published by Cambridge University Press. Here is a chapter, okay, on the Mughals, how Mughals studied science and developed it. The chapter is titled The Discovery Machine Goes to the Muslim World. Here it is. And the first heading here is the Mughal India. Mughal India. He starts talking about how science was studied during the reigns of Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, right? If you picked up any books like that, Mr. Hood Boy and your followers, you would know that Muslims have done a lot in the last 1,000 years. An immense contribution made to science and the development of the world. What changed all that is another question which I will quickly address in due course. Another book I recommend from you, Renaissances by Jack Goody, published by Cambridge University Press. Renaissances. Here he's talking about that the current study of history is entirely Eurocentric, just like it was in the 19th century. The Orientalists were Eurocentric thinkers. They were simply thinking, or they were simply conveying the idea that civilization only exists in Europe, or the white man only is civilized, not the rest of the world. Here Jack Goody argues that renaissances were taking place elsewhere too. For example, China and India. During the Mughal period, there was a renaissance there. So Renaissance was not only a European pursuit, rather it was happening elsewhere. It's just we don't study it. We don't see it with the same lens. So basically, we need to go back and study some of these works and see what Muslims have done. Very quickly, I want to mention passingly another figure who is very easily forgotten, Tipu Sultan. Okay, if you wanted to study what Muslims have done in science and technology in the last 1,000 years, I can give you, I have already given some examples. I can give you many more examples, but because the video needs to be short, I'll give you one precise example of Tipu Sultan, an immense figure in Indian history, a man who was struggling against the colonial rule of East India Company, and he had reached the heights of technological advancement. Okay, if you study the history of Tipu Sultan's technology, his production of weapons, for example, he outdid the French and the British in weapons production in Seringapatam, right? His innovations in silk farming, okay, or the farming of silkworms, for example, producing cloth, agriculture, right, and other pursuits when it comes to science, you will be shocked to read his history. He was a pioneer of rocket. Okay, he used military technology which shocked his opponents, and this is happening in between 1780 to 1799, right? 18th century. So what went wrong? What happened? Very quickly, colonialism, Mongol invasions, crusades, all of this put Muslims behind decades. Muslims are making very good progress. Okay. In fact, the Mongols, when they came into Muslim lands, they were shocked looking at the technology and the advancement the Muslims had achieved. Likewise, the Catholic monarchs, when they came to power in Granada, when they looked at the library, they were completely blown away. When they saw the Alhambra Palace, which is geometrical, okay, that happened within the last 1,000 years, they were completely blown away by the technology and the imagination of the Muslim artists. Okay. So all of this, you cannot forget it. In particular, study Tipu Sultan and his technology. You will be blown away completely. You will be blown away. Colonialism and these invasions and all these disturbances, they put the Muslims. In fact, colonial powers systematically worked in putting Muslims behind in technology. William Dalrymple talks about that in his book, Anarchy, his new book, Anarchy, where he talks about how East India Company worked hard in stopping the progress of the Muslims' power in particular in India, so that they cannot rise as opponents against the colonial ambitions of the East India Company in India.